Alright guys, here we are again, back at it again with another first person shooter speedrun. As you can see here, I'm just getting the project ready, making sure it's all regulation. Alright, I start off good, add a script to control the mouse to the camera, typical route. I know the meta usually goes first person controller first, but I really think the no F3 mouse run first is more of where the community as a whole is probably heading. Kind of start out with a little blunder with the Visual Studio, but we make it up pretty quick. Adding the public transform for the player body just to control the player, pretty essential in most runs. And then the rotation X, we start out by accidentally deleting the start method, but then we added it back pretty quick with the intelligent, code. You lock the cursor with the lock state, just so your mouse isn't floating around. Kind of essential to most of the routes that we're seeing these days. We get the mouse axis with the input.getAxis function and then multiply it by 4 just so that way it's a little more sensitive. Accidentally miss a parentheses, but it's pretty typical. You get some RNG with the keyboard these days. Once the devs added in the mechanical patch, it was all downhill. But yeah, then we get the vertical axis, same kind of method, multiply by 4 so you don't get anything, any rotation that you don't want. Then we clamp from -90 to 90. That way you can't spin all the way around. It's pretty essential. Don't want to look at your feet. Then we use the Euler angles function because no one really understands how quaternions work in the meta, and they're so obscure anyway. You're basically asking for a bottom 50% run if you're using those. For the transform of the actual camera, you're using the rotation of the mouse, and then you're adding the turn that you already did. I get a trun in there instead of a turn, but pretty quick to fix that. Then we use the Control D shortcut. Got to duplicate the line, just change it to the player body, and then finally gotta change that to 0 because you don't want the player actually moving up and down. Finally, we do transform.rotation. That should have been a transform.position. And then I catch the semicolon, then I see the type mismatch. I fumble there for a second, go for a transform.rotation, but then I recover pretty quickly. Then we're saving and waiting for the code to compile as it does. Reloading the script assemblies, pretty essential for most runs if you want to compile the game and run. Then we're adding the empty player game object, naming it player. Not really essential, but yeah, just the model so that way you can validate the run on both the scene view and the game view. Then you add the character controller to the player, and then you're adding a player script. You want to add the script on the same one as the character controller. You wouldn't want to accidentally control the wrong thing or not have public access. It's pretty essential. Again, we accidentally delete the start and update methods just to get rid of those comments, but it kind of comes back to bite us just a little bit. You got to get reference to that character controller, that way you can check your grounded and your speed and stuff. You can make these private, but just in case the meta changes and the given gravity changes from 10 to 20 or something, you never really want to make those private, just so that way you can change it on the fly. We declare the speed, the gravity, and the jump height. It's pretty typical stuff if you're gonna be doing a first person shooter. We don't make the velocity public because why would you do that? That was so 2018. Then we add back the update function and we get the X input. This is our X and our Z for forward and backward movement. we almost misspelled horizontal, but thankfully we understand the Control D shortcut and how to spell horizontal. Now this is the biggest mistake of the run. You can see there I do lowercase v vertical. This almost makes me lose world record, but thankfully we're able to clutch it out in the end, as you'll see. We use the built-in controller is grounded function because we wouldn't want to accidentally jump when we're not grounded, and then we're just dampening the velocity downward to 2 because otherwise you'll just accelerate for infinity, and that wouldn't be good. Clip through objects if you don't have that continuous collision. And then we added another if statement for if you're jumping. Then we use some fancy math equation to get the velocity that you should do for the jump. You know, it's always kind of just like that. You got to multiply it by gravity just to make sure that how far you jump in is based on your gravitational field. You know, finally we're just implementing all of the speed, the gravity, the jump height, everything. Then we're doing some interesting stuff. We declare a vector 3 of moving. That's where we're actually moving on the plane. We do our transform.right times our x, which is our A and D keys. And then we do our transform.forward times the z. This will make it so even if we're spinning around, the forward and back keys are going to be multiplying forward and back and side to side respectively. We add the gravity times time.delta time. That way it's just always scaling with the variable frame rate of most modern hardware. Then we're doing our controller.move. This is the easiest way to use the character controller. You could go the rigid body route and control it directly, but this is for a speedrun. It's most typically that we use the character controller. We finally hit that. We're looking good and we're confident, but unfortunately we missed that capital V in the vertical. We had a plane just to have something to collide against. We link up the transform to the player, and then we link up the character controller to the player script. We hit play, but unfortunately, as you can see here, it doesn't do anything. So we got to be quick about that. We go back. We stop the play, see the error message, and then immediately fix it. It was a nice save. And then we finally go back, reload the script assemblies, all the typical stuff. And then once we hit the ground there, that is time. We know we got the record. You can see me jumping around there. The frame rate's a bit choppy, but I think you'll understand. Alright. This has been it for the world record FPS Unity analysis. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope no one beats this record. It's pretty solid. Maybe a few more optimizations, but I think we've really hit the limit as the community. Alright, thank you.